let's talk about Amazon Lambda for logging, monitoring, and tracing. So the first thing we know is that Lambda is integrated with CloudWatch. And so what we know is that all the Lambda logs go straight into Amazon CloudWatch logs. And for this, we needed to ensure that the IAM role was correct. Also, we haven't seen this just yet, but we'll see it in a second. The Lambda metrics will be displayed in CloudWatch metrics. And that makes sense. We know that CloudWatch metrics cover pretty much every AWS service, so Lambda is just one of them. For this, we need to make sure that our Lambda function has an execution role with an IAM policy that authorizes writes to CloudWatch. That's extremely important. I've been repeating it 5 times already. It's because at the exam, it's going to be asked. Overall, any IAM questions and whatever EC2 or Lambda, you need to make sure that your functions or your instances are provisioned with the right roles. The other thing I haven't mentioned yet is that we can enable integration with X-Ray. And so we've seen X-Ray before, and it's possible to basically trace your Lambda function with the X-Ray. It works really, really well. And so to enable it, it's very simple. It's just a Lambda configuration. And then the X-Ray daemon we saw before was necessary to be run on our EC2 instances. Well, for Lambda functions run the X-Ray daemon for you, so you don't need to worry about that part. Then we just need to use the AWS SDK encode, and then to ensure that our Lambda function has the correct IAM execution role again, because if it writes traces to X-Ray, it needs to be able to do so in IAM. So that's it. Let's go ahead with the hands-on to see how things work. So something we know from before is that the logs of our function, if we go back to CloudWatch, they're going to be there. So anytime our function is being run, we get a new log stream, and in this log stream, we basically can see the log of our functions. And so that's quite nice. And this is it for the log integration with CloudWatch. Now, if we go to monitoring, the monitoring tab on the right-hand side, we can see the CloudWatch metrics at a glance. And so we're able to see a lot of interesting metrics. The first one is how many times we invoked our function. And so we can see over time if our function is being used a lot or not. By the way, we're able to set the time frame to 1 hour, 3 hours, 12 hours. You get the idea. So here we've seen that we invoked our function 4 times at some point, 2 times and 1 time, and so on. We can see how long our function was taking to run. So the idea is that you're able to set the appropriate timeout by just looking at this. So it gives you the minimum, which is the blue, the average, which is the orange, and the green one is going to be the maximum. And remember, when we made our function sleep, we were hitting 5 seconds of duration. It also gives you the errors and the availability. So anytime you get an error is when things don't work, and so you'll get this blue line hitting the 1 right here, and availability says how many times your function is running, and so you'll get availability errors when you have throttle, for example. Talking about throttles, here they are. We can see the throttles on the bottom left, and so when we throttle our function, we had 2.0. This is the idea is that when you see that the concurrency is too low, the throttle graph will just skyrocket, and so maybe you should set a CloudWatch alarm on this. Finally, anytime something goes to the dead letter, you get a dead letter errors metric showing right here, and we can see the number of concurrent executions on the bottom left, which again allows us to set the right concurrency for our function. So very simple, but quite a powerful graph, and you get this for every single function. Finally, let's talk about X-Ray. So let's scroll down and see X-Ray, which is right here. In debugging and error handling, we can enable active tracing. So behind active tracing, this is basically X-Ray. And so it says, okay, when you save your function with active tracing enabled, Lambda automatically adds the permission X-Ray put trace segment and X-Ray put telemetry records to the function's current role. So that means that my IAM role will be changed to have some X-Ray permissions. Let's click on save because we want to see this and refresh the page. Go back down and it's still not ticked. Let's save it again. Okay, now it's ticked. So it's been saved. Let's refresh the page. And so now our function should have the X-Ray permission. Let's go to IAM to check that. Let's refresh that page as well, just to see if we have the X-Ray permissions. And so yes, in terms of policy, we had this one should be the CloudWatch log policy. Yes, it is. This one is the SQS policy that we have added when we use the dead letter queue. And then finally, here we have a new policy, which is allowing our Lambda function to put trace segments and put telemetry records for X-ray. So that means we now have the X-ray integration enabled. So let's have a look and test it. Let's test it. So I'm going to click a few times on test, and the execution succeeded. And by the way, if you don't see the X-ray integration, make sure you are in North Virginia, US East 1. Otherwise, maybe your other region doesn't have yet the enablement of Lambda functions and X-ray traces. Okay, so now let's go and open X-ray. So X-ray, and so the X-ray should basically show us in the service map what's happening. Now this can take a little bit of time to update, so I'll just wait 2 minutes. And now we can see in our service map that our Lambda function was invoked by our client. We can see how long it was invoked, how long it took for the invocation. So we see the first invocation was lasting about 160 milliseconds, and we can see how long the Lambda function itself ran for. So this is going to be showing you the Lambda function, the Lambda service, and here the Lambda function. And so you're really able, using the service map, to see what's happening. Obviously, the more services we start integrating with, the more this service map will be clear. And so X-ray is quite awesome because now we can visually see and understand the latency. And when we get errors, they will show right here. So that's it for the X-ray integration. I will see you in the next lecture.